So let me tell you a story first. The story comes from this man who lived in India some years ago. His name is Ramana Maharshi. I think at the age of 10, 11 or 12, Ramana Maharshi had just came home from school. He was in the kitchen trying to make himself Zachary's pizza. And all of a sudden he had this feeling that he's going to die. It's a very traumatic experience or feeling that you're a young kid, you have your future planned out, at least to the best of your ability, and all of a sudden there is the presence of imminent death, and you have no idea if you're going to live to see tomorrow, what's going to happen to hopes, dreams, especially if you happen to be somewhat older. You never forgave your mom or forgave your dad, or your brothers or sisters or kids, or they never forgave you, you never got a chance. At any event, initially, this 10-year-old kid is profoundly scared, and then all of a sudden, whether it's self-observation or something else, it kicks in and says, if I'm going to die, maybe I should die peacefully. And so he lays flat on the kitchen floor and says, at least let me observe and experience how this death is going to capture and ultimately consume me. And without any warning, he has this feeling that he is leaving his physical body. And he does, supposedly. And he sees himself near the ceiling, and he looks down and he says, oh, well, that's my body. And this is me, but a different part of me. Is it true that I am not my body? And if I'm not my body, am I this other thing, like a spirit or a soul, whatever you may want to call it? And so he looks down at his corpse and he says, how foolish that for the past 11 years of my life, I've been pursuing all the wrong things in life. Lucky for him, he wasn't 45 or 60. And so after a few seconds, he drops back into his body and he says, well, since I'm not really my body, and my body is nothing but a corpse, a vehicle that carries my spirit, maybe I should no longer pursue the things that my body demands. Maybe I should go on the spiritual quest, whatever that may mean. And so once he's dropped back into his body and he becomes curious about who and what he is, he goes to his brother's room. His brother was asleep. He steals about 10, 12, 20 rupees, gets on a train and goes to this town. It's called Aranarchula, I think. And it was known for the city of sages and philosophers and monks and monkettes. And like the Buddha, like any one of us in this classroom who once in a while become interested in such foolish things, he sits, closes his eyes and meditates, and then he finds a monastery, goes to the basement and just sits there. When they find him eventually, they realize that his legs, his thighs were all bitten by insects, and they bring him up, cure him, heal him, and they ask him about his experiences, but he doesn't say anything. And that's one of the nice things about being a really good teacher, that you don't talk about experiences, you don't want to contaminate them with language, you don't want to contaminate them by speaking about your experience into other people's ears and having that experience being contaminated by people's interpretation that is related to their own unique, very limited history. So he's very quiet. But something about this man had changed so much that they built this structure for him, this temple for him. And every morning he just goes there and sits. He doesn't talk, he doesn't give lectures, he doesn't give sermons like all the other teachers. He just sits there. And people from the east, west, north, south, they go to him. They just sit there and just look at him. For those of you in this class who have ever read the Gospel of John, it's a book in which Jesus never tells a story. He basically says, look at me and you can have an experience. You see me, you see Adam, you see me, you see God, you see me, you see the light, you see me, you see this, you see me, you see that. That he is a one-stop shop. He's like Costco. There is something about his physical presence that reminds you of something, that inspires some parts of you. And you enjoy those parts of you that come to life. And that was what Ramana Maharshi was known for. And so when people, especially from America, would go to India and visit him, on their way back, they would say, I'm not really quite sure what happened, but just going and sitting and looking at Ramana Maharshi, it was like I was in the presence of God or something very special. So later on, he came to be known as the silent sage of India. There was only, I think, one interview of him. And the main question is, who am I? And his only response is, sit, and just ask the question over and over again. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? 1,000, maybe 1,000,000 times. And eventually something will happen. And for those of you in this class, you know, to some extent, maybe the history of language and the emotions behind it, what usually happens is, first you speak without thinking, without reflecting, without much emotions. Things just come out of your mouth without you knowing why. After a while, there is a certain amount of pain that inspires reflection. Then you begin to think about what exactly it is you're talking about. But then after a while, you come to realize, yes, you know what you're talking about, but you don't feel the stuff you're talking about. For those of you in this class who know a thing or two about James Baldwin, it's a funny thing when you kind of read his life story. First, he thinks he's straight, but there are these moments he finds himself attracted to men. Then he finds himself in a very difficult position. He doesn't know if he should step forward and kiss the woman, step forward or kiss the man. He doesn't know if he should fall in love. And some of his friends, of course, die, and his only regret was, why didn't I tell them I was in love with them while they were alive? And so what I'm trying to say is that there are these stages to language. Sometimes language is callous, it's unreflective. Sometimes language is filled with reflection and thought. Sometimes language is filled with emotions and reflections. And sometimes when you're so rich on the inside, there is no reason, there is no need to express anything. You are your own best companion, and you have the capacity to keep things to yourself. Ramana Maharshi, despite his profound experience, despite the richness that lived inside him, he didn't feel the need to inspire other people through language. He just sat.